You've been waiting for the right time, waiting for someone to notice you, validate you, approve of your dreams. But let me tell you something raw and real. No one's coming to save you. No one's going to hand you the life you want on a silver platter. The door you're staring at doesn't need a key. It needs you to kick it open. You keep looking for signs, for green lights, for permission slips to chase your greatness. But life doesn't respond to permission. It responds to powerful decisions. The moment you stop asking for approval is the moment you take your first step into freedom. So stop waiting, move without permission, and watch your life change in ways you can't even imagine yet. You're not stuck because you lack resources. You're stuck because deep down, you're still waiting for permission, waiting for someone to notice your efforts, waiting for circumstances to feel right, waiting for some magical sign to tell you it's your time. But what if I told you there is no permission slip coming? There is no moment where life taps you on the shoulder and says, now you're ready. You've been conditioned to believe that you need to be told when to move, how to move, and whether you're allowed to move. That's the lie. And that lie is keeping you small. You were never supposed to ask the world for permission to become great. But the truth is, most people are addicted to waiting. They disguise it as preparation, as politeness, as strategy. But underneath all that, fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. So they wait. And the more you wait, the deeper your belief becomes that you're not enough without someone else's approval. You hand your power over piece by piece to people who don't live your life, don't carry your dreams, and certainly don't carry your pain. And the longer you wait, the heavier it all gets. The regret, the what ifs, the silent frustration, it builds until one day you wake up and realize you've built a cage around your potential and the lock was never real. You were holding the key the whole time. You think success is reserved for the lucky, the chosen, the ones who have it all figured out. But that's not how it works. Success is reserved for the people who move, who take messy action, who don't wait to be validated, who understand that clarity doesn't come before action. It comes from action. You think you need confidence before you start. No, you don't. You just need the courage to take one step. Because when you do, everything changes. The moment you move, even if it's imperfect, the moment you say, I'm done waiting, something inside of you wakes up. That's when the momentum kicks in. That's when your identity starts to shift. Because it's not about what you do once. It's about who you become when you decide to stop playing small. You were born with a fire inside you. But if you wait too long, that fire dims. Not because it's gone, but because you've buried it under years of hesitation. You keep convincing yourself that someday the opportunity will be just right, that the right people will notice you, that you'll feel ready. But ready is a myth. There are no perfect conditions. There is only now, right now, this moment. And if you don't grab it, you're letting your power slip through your fingers. Again, you've got dreams, not because you're supposed to keep them in your head and fantasize about them. You've got dreams because you were meant to bring them to life. But you'll never do that if you keep asking for permission to live. Every breakthrough starts with a decision. And that decision is always made in uncertainty. You think the people who are living the life you want had guarantees? No. They just decided to move. They acted before they had all the answers. They leaned into the unknown, not because they weren't afraid, but because they refused to be controlled by fear any longer. That's what separates the people who thrive from the people who merely survive. The ones who thrive made the choice to stop waiting. They understood that waiting is just another form of procrastination. And procrastination is the most dangerous lie we tell ourselves because it feels responsible, it feels reasonable, but it kills more dreams than failure ever could. You keep asking for signs. Let me be clear, you are the sign. Your desire is the signal. Your frustration is the wake-up call. Life has already been telling you, screaming at you, in fact, that it's time to move. But if you don't listen, if you keep outsourcing your power, you'll miss the life that was always meant to be yours. You'll watch others live boldly while you sit in silence, building stories in your mind about why it's not your turn yet. And that story, it becomes your reality. But you have the power to change the story right now. You don't need a title, a degree, a connection, or even permission. You just need to decide that you're done sitting on the sidelines of your own life, that you're no longer available for excuses, for delays, for smallness, that you're ready to disrupt the pattern and start living like you mean it. Everything you want is on the other side of that decision. And the second you stop waiting, the second you step out of the cage and claim your own power, you'll start to see how much was always possible for you, not because someone told you so, but because you finally believed it enough to act on it. So don't wait for the world to give you a green light. Be the damn green light. Move. Move with fear, move with doubt, move with uncertainty, but move. Because nothing changes until you do. Permission is the most deceptive form of limitation. It doesn't come with shackles or locks. It comes with smiles and polite expectations. It's taught in school, reinforced by society, and passed down like an heirloom. This idea that you must wait your turn, be quiet, stay small, and only speak or act when asked. That if you want to be respected, you must comply. But here's the truth most people never realize. And as long as you keep waiting for someone to give you the go-ahead, you'll stay locked inside a life that never really felt like your own. You weren't born asking for permission. As a child, you cried when you were hungry, reached when you wanted something, moved without hesitation. But somewhere along the line, that boldness got trained out of you. You were told to raise your hand, to speak, to follow the rules, to only stand up if someone else said it was okay. You were taught that to be accepted, you had to shrink. To be safe, you had to obey. And little by little, that instinct to move on your own terms was buried under layers of should, can't, and not yet. And now, here you are, an adult with dreams that burn, goals that whisper to you at night, ideas that excite you, but still asking for permission. You wait for someone to validate your vision, to agree with your decisions, to say, yes, now is the time. You wait for people who have never walked in your shoes to approve the direction you feel pulled toward. But the problem is, those people are not supposed to get it. They weren't given your vision. They don't hear the inner calling that you hear. So why would you expect them to understand? Why would you let them hold the keys to a life they're not even living? When you live by permission, you live by someone else's standards. You play their game, follow their rules, and end up wondering why you feel unfulfilled. Because deep down, you know you're living a filtered version of yourself. One that's acceptable to others, but unacceptable to your own soul. You silence your voice to maintain peace, but the war inside you only grows louder. You stay in the box they drew around you, not realizing the only thing keeping you there is your agreement with their limitation. The people who change the world, the ones who lead movements, build empires, and create massive impact. They didn't wait for approval. They didn't ask the world if it was okay to be bold. They declared it. They disrupted the norms, bent the rules, and stepped out of line on purpose. Because they knew that real freedom doesn't come from fitting in. It comes from owning who you are and moving like you were born to move. These people don't just exist in history books. Some of them are around you right now. They're just like you with fear and doubt and uncertainty, but they made a different choice. They stopped needing permission. Permission is seductive because it makes you feel like you're doing the right thing, like you're being responsible, cautious, respectful. But there's a difference between being respectful and being restricted. And too many people blur that line so much, they can't tell when their life stopped being theirs. You're not disrespectful for choosing a different path. You're not rebellious for saying no to a mediocre life. You're not selfish for making decisions that align with your purpose. You're just free. And some people don't know what to do with that. That's okay. You weren't put here to make everyone else comfortable. You were put here to live with conviction, to act with purpose, and to lead by example. Every time you hesitate because you're worried about what someone will think, you hand them a piece of your power. Every time you delay a dream because you're afraid to upset someone, you trade your purpose for their comfort. And every time you ask for permission to be who you already are, you tell yourself that your voice needs someone else's blessing to be valid. That's not the truth. That's the script you've been given, and it's time to stop reading from it. You were not meant to live small. You were not meant to seek validation for being yourself. You were not meant to spend your life trying to meet expectations that were never yours to begin with. You were meant to own your truth, speak your mind, build your vision, and live unapologetically. And you can't do any of that while waiting for someone to tell you it's okay. The power to change your life begins the moment you stop asking for permission. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're finally willing to bet on yourself. You don't need anyone else to co-sign your destiny. Your dream is already legitimate. Your passion is already worthy. The only thing missing is your action. And action doesn't wait. Action doesn't apologize. Action doesn't need a permission slip. It needs a decision. You can keep waiting, hoping, asking, checking in. Or you can decide right now that you've waited long enough, that your life matters too much to be paused for the comfort of others, that you weren't born to live someone else's version of right, that you're done tiptoeing, you're done explaining, you're done shrinking, you're ready to move. Not because someone said it was time, but because you finally realized it always was. Every breakthrough in life begins with a decision. Not 10 decisions, not a perfectly mapped out plan, just one clear, powerful, committed decision. And yet most people never make it. They dabble, they hesitate, they keep one foot in and one foot out, always preparing but never fully leaping. But life doesn't respond to hesitation, it responds to certainty. It responds to a person who has burned the boats, drawn the line, and said, I don't know exactly what's ahead, but I know I'm not going back. Because decision is the ultimate power. The moment you make a real decision, everything starts to move. Most people think they're making decisions, but what they're really doing is making wishes. But underneath that, they're leaving space for backup plans, for comfort zones, for safety nets. That's not a decision. A decision cuts off all other possibilities. It says, this is happening, I don't care how hard it gets, I'm in, I'm committed. That level of clarity, that level of emotional intensity sends a signal to the universe, to your subconscious mind, and to the people around you that this is real. And when that energy gets locked in, you start attracting resources, opportunities, and people you never even imagined. Why? Because the world respects decisiveness. Life flows toward it. You don't need permission. You don't need a perfect strategy. You don't need someone to hold your hand. What you need is a moment where you finally get fed up enough with your own limitations that you say, enough. I'm done being stuck. I'm done waiting. I'm done living half of what I know I'm capable of. That moment is a turning point. It's the moment when your story changes. Not because the world around you shifts, but because you shift. You become someone new in that decision. That's the power of it. We live in a world obsessed with planning, mapping, organizing, and overthinking. We want everything figured out before we act. But real growth never works that way. The biggest changes in your life will never be the result of something perfectly calculated. They'll come from a moment where you stop negotiating with yourself and make a move fast, bold, and without apology. The mind loves certainty, but certainty doesn't come from overanalyzing every step. Certainty is a byproduct of action. It's created, it's not found. The people who move fast, who act in spite of fear, who jump before they feel ready, those are the people who build momentum, and momentum is magic. Once you have it, you feel unstoppable, but you can't get it while standing still. You know what kills dreams more than anything else? Indecision. Sitting on the fence, waffling between two options, that limbo, that hesitation, that endless waiting for the perfect choice, it eats away at your soul. Because deep down, you know what you want. You're just afraid to claim it. You're afraid of choosing wrong. But let me tell you something. There's no such thing as a wrong decision when you're fully committed. Because even if the path is tough, even if it doesn't work out the way you imagined, you grow, you learn, you adapt, and that growth builds a version of you that's far more powerful than the one who stood still. Think about any time in your life when things finally changed, really changed. It wasn't because the world gave you permission. It was because you got to a point where staying the same hurt more than changing. You reached your threshold, and in that moment, you made a decision. Maybe it was to walk away. Maybe it was to start something new. Maybe it was to finally believe in yourself. But the result was the same. Life responded because life doesn't wait. It mirrors back the energy you put into it. If you show up with hesitation, life gives you resistance. But when you show up with certainty, when you draw a line in the sand and act like you mean it, things begin to shift, sometimes immediately. Don't confuse movement with progress. Don't confuse thinking with acting. Don't confuse preparing with deciding. You can spend your whole life getting ready, studying, planning, analyzing, and still never make a real move. Or you can decide, and you can say, this is my standard now. This is my new identity. This is who I am from now on. And then act like it. Every action becomes different. Every thought gets filtered through that decision. That's when the shift happens. Because you're no longer trying to change your life, you've already changed it internally. And the external world simply catches up. You don't need another seminar. You don't need another book or mentor or strategy. All of that is helpful, yes, but none of it works without the decision. And the decision is yours. You have that power right now, in this moment. And when you decide, really decide, you don't need to shout it to the world. You don't need to convince anyone. You just move quietly, powerfully, relentlessly. Because the world doesn't need more people waiting to be picked. It needs people to pick themselves. People who understand that the quality of their life will be determined by the quality of their decisions. And the most powerful decision you can make right now is to stop waiting and step fully into the life you know you're meant to live, without hesitation, without fear, and without permission. Every single time you take action without waiting for permission, you're not just making progress, you're shaping your identity. You're casting a vote for the kind of person you want to become. Action is not just about getting results. It's about becoming the person who doesn't hesitate, who doesn't hold back, who trusts themselves enough to move even when the path isn't clear. Because identity is not something you're born with. It's something you build. And the most powerful way to build it is by doing the things that scare you, the things that stretch you, the things that make you uncomfortable but force you to grow. You don't become confident by sitting on the sidelines thinking about being confident. You become confident by doing, by showing up, by failing and getting back up. You become courageous by taking risks, not by waiting for fear to go away, but by moving through it. Action creates identity. And the people who rise, the people who succeed at the highest levels, understand this at a deep level. They're not waiting for clarity before they act. They know clarity comes from action. Every step you take, every decision you make without needing external validation rewires the way you see yourself. You start to think, maybe I am capable. Maybe I do have what it takes. And that belief becomes your new reality. Most people wait to feel like the person they want to be before they act like it. They want to feel motivated before they go to the gym, feel inspired before they start the business, feel fearless before they take the leap. But the human mind doesn't work like that. You don't feel your way into a new identity. You act your way into it. Action changes everything. It changes your thoughts, your emotions, your patterns. It gives you proof that you are not your excuses, not your limitations, not your fears. You are your choices. And when you choose to move without permission, you're choosing to stop letting your past define your future. Think about it. Every moment you choose boldness over hesitation, you're building muscle. Not physical muscle, but mental and emotional muscle. You're training yourself to be someone who trusts their gut, who doesn't need to be told what's possible, who doesn't wait for consensus before they take the leap. That's a person who's dangerous in the best way. That's a person who can lead, who can create, who can shape the world around them instead of reacting to it. That's the version of you that's already inside. It's not something you have to go find. It's something you unlock one courageous action at a time. People talk about finding their purpose, discovering who they really are, but most of the time they're just circling around the truth because they're afraid to move. Purpose isn't something you find in a journal entry or a meditation. Purpose is discovered in motion. You figure it out as you go. You try something and it either ignites something in you or it teaches you something you didn't know. Either way, you win. But only if you move. When you act, even imperfectly, you get feedback, you learn, you adjust, you grow. And that growth is the foundation of a new identity. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing it anyway. That phrase gets thrown around a lot, but it's true, and it's powerful. Because most people are waiting for fear to vanish before they step up, but that's never going to happen. Fear is a part of the process. It's not a stop sign, it's a signal. It means you're pushing into territory that matters. And when you feel that fear and move anyway, you don't just overcome the fear. You transform your relationship with yourself. You prove to yourself that you can be afraid and still take the leap. And that proof rewires your brain. It shifts your belief system. It tells a new story about who you are. You go from being the person who doubts, hesitates, and overthinks to the person who decides, moves, and leads. That's a powerful shift. And it doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. The more you move, the more aligned your actions become with the identity of the person you're becoming. And soon, the gap between who you are and who you want to be starts to close. Not because time passed, but because you showed up differently. You moved differently. You owned your power instead of waiting for someone to hand it to you. There is no transformation without movement. You can't think your way into a better life. You can only act your way there. And every action that feels uncomfortable, every step that feels uncertain, is a deposit into your future identity. It's evidence that you're becoming the kind of person who no longer needs to ask for permission to live fully, to speak boldly, to pursue relentlessly. You become someone who leads, who creates, who sets the tone instead of waiting for the world to give you a cue. You don't need to feel like the best version of yourself before you start acting like it. You just need to move. With fear, with doubt, with a trembling voice and the shaking hands, move anyway. Because on the other side of that discomfort is not just a result, it's a new you, a stronger you, a more certain, grounded, powerful version of yourself that was waiting to be revealed the whole time. Not through thought, but through movement, through bold, imperfect, relentless action. So stop trying to earn your way into confidence. Act. And let the action shape you into the person you were born to be. The moment you stop needing validation from the outside world is the moment you take your power back. When you no longer crave applause, approval, or recognition, you begin to move differently. You stop hesitating, you stop filtering yourself, you stop diluting your truth to make it more palatable for people who were never meant to understand it in the first place. You start speaking from conviction, not convenience. You start living with intention, not permission. And that shift is everything, because until you silence the noise of others, you will never fully hear your own voice. Most people are prisoners of opinion. They live their lives walking on eggshells, wondering what others will think, how they'll be judged, whether they'll be accepted. They hold back their dreams, their truth, their ideas because they fear rejection. But what they don't realize is that they're already rejecting themselves. Every time you shrink to fit someone else's comfort zone, every time you silence your voice to maintain peace, you're telling yourself that your truth doesn't matter, that your worth is dependent on someone else's response, and that is the most dangerous belief of all. You weren't put on this earth to please people. You were put here to live with purpose, to walk your path with certainty, to speak your truth with power, and that will absolutely make people uncomfortable. It will trigger some, it will confuse others, and it will offend a few, but that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to live in alignment with who you are, not with who the world expects you to be. The second you make peace with the fact that not everyone will like you, you free yourself to finally be your. There's a version of you that's buried under layers of noise. Noise from society, from parents, from culture, from fear-based programming. A version of you that is powerful, bold, unapologetic. A version of you that doesn't ask for permission to speak, to act, to live fully. That version of you is always there. It's just been drowned out by the volume of other people's expectations. And it's time to turn the dial down on that noise. It's time to give the microphone back to the one voice that actually matters. Yours. Critics will always be there. And the more you grow, the louder they'll get. That's the cost of playing big. But here's the truth most people miss. Critics don't know your heart. They don't know your vision. They don't know the battles you've fought or the pain you've endured. They're not building what you're building. They're not dreaming what you're dreaming. So why would you let them dictate how you move? You wouldn't stop building your house because a stranger walks by and doesn't like the color of the paint. So why stop building your life because someone has an opinion about your choices? The moment you stop trying to be understood is the moment you become truly powerful. Because when your validation comes from within, you're untouchable. When you move from internal conviction instead of external applause, you become a force. You speak differently, you walk differently. People feel it, they sense it, and they respect it even if they don't agree with it. There's a presence that comes from owning your voice, a magnetism that comes from living your truth, and that can't be faked. It's built in the moments where you choose to trust yourself instead of the crowd. There will be moments when your truth threatens someone else's comfort, when your decision to rise exposes their decision to stay small. And in those moments, people may try to pull you back down, not because you're wrong, but because your growth challenges them. Don't let that stop you. Don't make yourself smaller to keep others comfortable. That's not humility. That's self-betrayal. True humility is owning your light without needing to dim it. It's knowing you're powerful and still grounded. It's walking in your truth without needing to prove anything to anyone. And let's be clear, silencing your voice to avoid judgment won't save you from it. People will judge you whether you speak or stay silent, whether you take risks or play it safe, whether you shine or shrink. So if you're going to be judged either way, you might as well be judged for living your truth, for going all in, for being bold, because at least then the judgment is worth something. At least then you're building a life that belongs to you. Stop outsourcing your identity to other people's opinions. Stop letting strangers on the internet, co-workers, distant family members, or even your inner critic tell you who you are. Reclaim that authority. Reclaim your voice, because the only voice that needs to believe in you is your own. And once that voice becomes louder than the rest, you become unstoppable. You are not here to be agreeable. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be real, to be raw, to be you, fully, unapologetically, and relentlessly. And the sooner you stop needing validation, the sooner you'll stop fearing rejection, because you'll realize you never needed anyone's approval to begin with. You just needed to give yourself permission to be everything you already are. And when you finally do that, when you move from that place, your life will reflect the power that's always been inside you. You just stopped hiding it. You don't have to earn your right to move forward in life. You don't need to qualify for your own greatness. You were born with the right to move, to speak, to create, to lead. That right wasn't handed to you by another person, and it sure as hell doesn't need to be signed off by society. It came with you. It was woven into your DNA from the moment you took your first breath, and yet somewhere along the way you were convinced otherwise. Convinced that you needed to prove yourself, that you needed to wait your turn, that you needed to become ready before you stepped forward. But none of that is true. You don't need to become anything other than decisive. You just need to remember who the hell you are. The world doesn't tell you you're powerful. It tells you you're not enough, so it can sell you something. It tells you to stay in line so it can control you. It tells you to follow the path so it doesn't feel threatened by your vision. But if you listen too long, you'll forget your truth. You'll forget that you already have the authority to step into the life you were meant to live. You'll start believing you need someone to tap you on the shoulder and say, you're allowed to go now. But here's the wake-up call. No one is coming. No permission slip will ever arrive. You are the green light. You are the door. You are the authority you've been waiting for. We're trained to look outside of ourselves for the answers, for validation, for cues. But everything you've ever needed is already inside you. That fire, that hunger, that whisper that says you were made for more. It's not your imagination. It's your inner truth trying to get your attention. And every time you ignore it, every time you downplay it or dismiss it or put it off for later, you're betraying the very part of yourself that knows what's possible. That part of you doesn't need permission. It needs action. It needs courage. It needs a decision. That part of you is tired of waiting. It's ready. The world doesn't respond to potential, it responds to power. And power comes from owning your space, from showing up as if you belong because you do, from walking into a room like your presence matters because it does, from making moves that say, I know who I am and I don't need you to agree with it for it to be true. That kind of energy changes everything. It changes the way people look at you. It changes the way opportunities open up. But more importantly, it changes how you see yourself. Because when you stop waiting to feel worthy and start acting like you are, you begin to live in a completely different frequency. A frequency that doesn't chase approval, it attracts results. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. You don't have to make a case for your vision. You don't have to convince people to support your dreams. You just have to move. Let your movement be your message. Let your results do the talking. Because the truth is, people only believe in you to the extent that you believe in yourself. If you carry doubt, the world will mirror that doubt back to you. But if you carry certainty, even in the face of chaos, the world has no choice but to shift around you. The idea that you must wait until you're qualified, until you're liked, until you're supported, it's a lie. The most successful people you see out there didn't start because they were ready. They started because they were no longer willing to sit on the sidelines of their own life. They moved with shaky hands. They made bold decisions with a pounding heart. They acted before they had the full map, and in doing so, they built a life that validated their truth, not one that waited to be validated. You're no different. You have that same right, the same fire, the same potential. The only difference is the decision to stop holding back. You were born with the right to rise, to take up space, to say, I'm here and I'm not asking anymore. Not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. Not out of ego, but out of truth. Because when you stop treating your goals like distant possibilities and start treating them like non-negotiables, everything around you adjusts. Your energy shifts, your standards shift, and the way you carry yourself begins to reflect that inner knowing that you don't need to wait for someone else to say, yes, you already did. So many people spend their lives trying to be chosen, picked, acknowledged. But what if you just chose yourself? What if you stopped knocking and kicked down the door instead? What if you stopped waiting to be discovered and started deciding to be undeniable? That's not fantasy. That's power. That's ownership. And it begins the moment you stop believing you have to wait for your life to begin. You don't need to beg for the space you're meant to stand in. You just need to claim it boldly, decisively. And once you do, everything changes. Because the world cannot ignore a person who refuses to be silenced, delayed, or diminished. So stop asking, start acting. You were born with the right to move, now go prove it.